The mining colony of New Harmony sat on the edge of human space like a forgotten toy. The buildings were simple metal boxes connected by covered walkways. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make the alien overseers nervous. Just humans doing their work, staying quiet and following the rules. Maya Chen was 8 years old and loved the recreation dome more than anywhere else in the colony. It was the only place with real grass and trees, even if they were under a clear plastic bubble. She spent most afternoons there after school, running around while her father worked in the mines. Maya had dark hair that never stayed in its braids and bright eyes that saw wonder in everything. She collected smooth rocks from the dome's walking paths and made up stories about space adventures. Her favorite game was pretending to be a starship captain exploring new worlds. The colony had about 3,000 people. Most were miners who dug valuable metals from the planet's crust. There were also farmers who grew food in the hydroponic bays, engineers who kept the machines running, and teachers like Maya's mother who taught the children. The aliens who controlled this part of space were called the Galactic Concordat. They said humans were too dangerous to travel freely among the stars. Humans had to stay in their assigned systems and follow strict rules. No advanced weapons, no large spaceships, no causing trouble. Maya didn't understand why the aliens were scared of humans. Her father was gentle and told funny stories. Her mother sang lullabies and helped injured birds. The neighbors shared food when someone was sick. These didn't seem like dangerous people to her. The Krillians were the aliens who watched over human colonies. They were tall and thin with gray skin that looked like rough stone. Their eyes were black and cold like deep space. They wore armor that hummed with energy and carried weapons that could melt metal. Every few months, Krillian enforcers would visit the colony. They would check that humans weren't building forbidden technology or planning to cause trouble. The visits were always tense. Adults spoke in whispers and told children to stay inside. On this particular day, Maya was in the recreation dome building a fort out of fallen branches. The artificial sun was warm on her back as she worked. Other children played nearby while their parents sat on benches and talked quietly. The alarm started without warning. It was a harsh buzzing sound that meant all civilians should go to their homes immediately. Maya looked up from her fort, confused. The dome had never had an alarm before. Through the clear walls, she could see Krillian ships landing near the colony's main entrance. They were black and angular, like knives cutting through the sky. More ships than had ever come before. Adults began gathering their children quickly. Maya's father wasn't there, he was still in the mines. Her mother was at the school on the other side of the colony. Maya didn't know what to do. A woman named Mrs. Rodriguez took Maya's hand. "Come on, little one," she said. "We need to get you home." But Maya's home was far away, and the Krillian soldiers were already entering the dome. There were 6 of them in full battle armor. Their footsteps echoed against the dome's metal floor. The leader had symbols on his chest that Maya didn't recognize. He carried a weapon that glowed blue at the tip. "All humans will remain stationary," the leader announced. His voice sounded like gravel falling down a metal chute. "This facility is being searched for contraband technology. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." The soldiers spread out across the dome. They used handheld devices to scan everything, the trees, the benches, even the children's toys. One soldier found Maya's collection of smooth rocks and examined each one carefully before throwing them aside. Maya felt scared and angry. These were her special rocks, and the soldier was treating them like garbage. She wanted to tell him to be careful, but Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed her hand tightly and shook her head. The search went on for what felt like hours. The soldiers were rough with everything they touched. They broke branches off trees and left deep footprints in the grass. They scattered toys and knocked over carefully arranged flower beds. Maya's father appeared at the dome entrance. His mining clothes were dirty and his face was worried. He looked around until he saw Maya with Mrs. Rodriguez. Relief showed in his eyes as he started walking toward them. "Papa," Maya called out. She let go of Mrs. Rodriguez's hand and ran toward her father. She was so happy to see him that she forgot about the soldiers and their rules. The Krillian leader was standing between Maya and her father. Maya was running fast and looking at her father's face instead of watching where she was going. She bumped into the alien's armored leg with a small thud. The soldier looked down at Maya like she was a dangerous animal. His black eyes showed no emotion as he raised his weapon. "Hostile human has attacked a Concordat enforcer," he announced in that gravelly voice. Maya's father started running. "No, she's just a child. She didn't mean anything," Mrs. Rodriguez screamed. Other parents grabbed their children and backed away. Everyone knew what was about to happen, but no one could stop it. The blue glow at the tip of the weapon grew brighter. Maya looked up at the tall alien soldier, still not understanding. She had bumped into him by accident. She was going to say sorry. The weapon fired with a sound like thunder. The blue energy hit Maya in the chest and threw her small body backward. She landed on the grass that she loved so much, and she didn't move again. Maya's father reached her a few seconds later. He dropped to his knees and gathered her into his arms. Her body was still and empty. The bright eyes that saw wonder in everything were closed forever. The sound that came from Maya's father was not quite human. It was the cry of something breaking deep inside. He held his daughter close and rocked back and forth, making that terrible sound over and over. The Krillian leader put his weapon away. "Enforcement action completed," he said. "Let this serve as a reminder that humans must control their aggressive impulses." The other soldiers finished their search and found nothing. There was no contraband technology in the recreation dome. There never had been. They had come here, destroyed a place of peace, and killed a child for no reason. Before leaving, the leader spoke to the crowd of horrified humans. "The Concordat will not tolerate violence against its representatives. Any retaliation for this necessary action will result in severe consequences for your entire colony." The Krillian ships lifted off and disappeared into the sky. They left behind a father holding his dead daughter, a mother running across the colony screaming her child's name, and a community that would never be the same. Maya's funeral was held in the recreation dome 3 days later. Her small body was buried under the trees she had loved. The grass was still burned where the weapon had fired. As the colonists sang sad songs and shared memories of a little girl who collected rocks and dreamed of being a starship captain, none of them knew that her death would change everything. The news was already traveling through human space, carried by secret transmissions and coded messages. Maya Chen had become something she never got the chance to be in life. She had become the spark that would set the galaxy on fire. The news reached Earth 72 hours after Maya Chen died. It came through the usual channels at first, official reports that mentioned an enforcement incident on New Harmony Colony. The Concordat's version made it sound like a necessary action against human aggression, but humans had their own ways of sharing information. Hidden networks carried the real story. Encrypted messages bounced between relay stations. By the time the truth reached Earth, everyone knew what had really happened. The aliens had murdered a child for bumping into a soldier. Admiral Sarah Voss was 63 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the human fleet. Her gray hair was always pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes had seen too much war. She stood in her office on Luna Station, reading the report for the 10th time. Maya Chen, 8 years old, loved collecting rocks and playing in the grass. Shot dead for running to her father. Sarah had been keeping Earth's biggest secret for 30 years. When humanity signed the Treaty of Kepler Station, they had promised to dismantle their military fleet. The aliens believed humans were too aggressive for space travel, so humans had agreed to limit themselves to defensive ships only. It was all a lie. The human fleet had never been dismantled. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of advanced technology had been hidden in the dark spaces between worlds. For 3 decades, they had waited in secret bases beyond Pluto's orbit, maintained by skeleton crews and automated systems. Sarah walked to her wall safe and entered a code she had memorized but never used. Inside was a simple red box with a single button. Next to it was a list of frequencies and code words. This was the Phoenix Initiative, humanity's plan for the day when peaceful coexistence became impossible. She pressed the button. Across human space, sleeping giants began to wake up. Hidden bases powered up their reactors. Ships that had been floating dark and cold for decades suddenly came alive with light and energy. Crews who had been living normal lives on colonies and space stations received coded messages and quietly disappeared. The first ship to fully activate was the Dreadnought Retribution. It was 10 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a moon. Captain Marcus Chen had been its commanding officer when it was supposedly scrapped 30 years ago. He had been living on Mars, working as a cargo pilot and raising his brother's family. Marcus received his activation code while having dinner with his wife and children. He read the message twice, then stood up from the table. His family knew what the look in his eyes meant. They had always known this day might come. "The fleet is being recalled," he said quietly. "Maya is dead." His wife nodded and began gathering emergency supplies. His teenage son and daughter had grown up knowing their father had another life, another duty. They helped him pack his uniform and personal weapons without asking questions. Marcus wasn't the only one saying goodbye to civilian life. Across human space, thousands of people were putting on military uniforms they had kept hidden for decades. Veterans who had become farmers, engineers, teachers, and shopkeepers were returning to their true profession: war. The Concordate's intelligence networks noticed the increased activity in human space, but couldn't understand what they were seeing. Humans were supposed to be limited to small cargo ships and basic defense platforms. The energy signatures they were detecting didn't match anything in their files. On the planet Kepler, alien observers watched in confusion as human merchant ships began retrofitting themselves with military-grade armor and weapons. The modifications were happening too quickly, as if the parts had been stored nearby and waiting. "The humans are building warships," reported a Veltar intelligence officer to his superiors. The Veltar were a cautious species with excellent sensors, but they're using technology we've never seen before. The Veltar command dismissed the report. Humans were clever but primitive. They used kinetic weapons instead of energy beams. Their ships were slow and bulky compared to Concordate vessels. Even if they were building a few warships, they couldn't pose a real threat to galactic civilization. Admiral Voss held her first staff meeting in 30 years. The conference room on Luna Station filled with officers who had been living double lives. There was Admiral Kumar, who had been working as a college professor on Europa; Colonel Martinez, who ran a restaurant on Ceres Station; Commander Park, who had been mining asteroids with her family. "The Phoenix Initiative is now active," Sarah announced. "The Treaty of Kepler Station is void. We are no longer bound by any agreements that limit human military capability." The officers around the table were professionals who had spent decades preparing for this moment, but they were also human beings who were angry about the murder of a child. Their faces showed the cold rage that comes when good people decide they've had enough. "What are our objectives?" asked Admiral Kumar. "Justice for Maya Chen," Sarah replied, "and freedom for humanity. The aliens have kept us caged for 30 years because they fear what we might become. They were right to be afraid." Fleet Captain Rodriguez raised her hand. She had been maintaining the stealth destroyer Wolfpack in the asteroid belt. "What about civilian casualties? The Krillian homeworld has billions of innocent beings." Sarah's expression didn't change. "We will follow the laws of war as written by humans, not aliens. Military targets only, but the Krillians will answer for what they've done." The meeting lasted 6 hours. They discussed strategy, logistics, and rules of engagement. The human fleet had been designed to fight a defensive war against alien invasion. Now they were planning the opposite, an offensive strike that would shock the galaxy. As word spread through human space, something unexpected happened. The colonies that had seemed peaceful and cooperative began revealing their own secrets. Asteroid miners had been building shipyards inside hollowed-out rocks. Agricultural worlds had been manufacturing weapons in their underground factories. Even the smallest outposts had hidden stockpiles of military equipment. The aliens had seen what humans wanted them to see: farmers, miners, and traders who were grateful for the chance to live among the stars. They had never noticed the engineers who made their mining equipment too efficient, or the cargo haulers who took indirect routes through empty space, or the teachers who included military history in every lesson. On New Harmony Colony, Maya's father stood at his daughter's grave. The grass was starting to grow back where her blood had soaked into the soil. He was no longer just a miner grieving for his child. The message had reached him too. 25 years ago, he had been Sergeant David Chen of the Human Marine Corps. His specialty had been demolitions and urban warfare. He had been one of the first humans to fight aliens in ground combat, back when the species were still testing each other's abilities. David knelt beside Maya's small headstone and spoke to her in the growing darkness. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, little star. But your Uncle Marcus is coming. The whole fleet is coming, and when they're done, no alien will ever hurt another human child." The wind carried his words across the colony, where other humans were receiving their own activation codes. The peaceful mining settlement was about to become something very different. Across the galaxy, the Concordat Council was holding emergency sessions to discuss the unusual activity in human space. They debated increased patrols and economic sanctions. Some suggested negotiating new treaties with better monitoring systems. None of them understood that negotiations were no longer possible. The treaty had been broken the moment a Krillian soldier decided that an 8-year-old girl was a threat worth killing. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the fleet assemble. Ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and the massive dreadnoughts that were humanity's ultimate weapons. The aliens had always wondered why humans built such ugly ships. Where alien vessels were smooth and elegant, human warships were brutal and practical. They looked like weapons because that's exactly what they were. As the last ship took its position in the formation, Sarah opened a channel to the entire fleet. 10,000 ships and 3 million human warriors waited for her words. For 30 years we have honored a peace treaty with beings who saw us as dangerous animals to be contained, she said. We accepted their restrictions because we believed in the possibility of coexistence. They have shown us that coexistence was never their goal. Domination was. She paused and looked at the tactical display showing their route to Krillian space. Maya Chen was 8 years old. She died because she ran to her father. That is the crime the Krillians believed deserved execution. Today we show them what human justice looks like. The fleet began moving toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth turned in space, blue and green and beautiful. Ahead of them lay a galaxy that was about to learn what humans had always known about themselves. They were not the monsters the aliens feared, but when someone hurt their children, they could become something much worse. The emergency session of the Concordat Council convened on Nexus Prime, the capital world that governed 47 different species across the galaxy. The Great Chamber was designed to show the unity of galactic civilization, representatives from dozens of worlds sitting together in peaceful discussion. Today, that peace was in question. The Krillian representative stood at the center podium, his gray skin looking even more like stone under the chamber's harsh lights. Ambassador Thekvor had served the Concordat for 60 years and had never shown doubt about anything. But the reports coming from human space were making even him nervous. The human reaction is completely out of proportion to the incident, he declared to the assembled delegates. One human juvenile was terminated for assaulting a Concordat enforcer. This justified action is being used as an excuse for massive military buildup. The Veltar delegate raised one of her forearms. The Veltar were careful beings who studied everything before speaking. Ambassador Thekvor, our sensors are detecting energy signatures from human space that don't match any known technology. How do you explain this? Thekvor's black eyes showed no emotion. Humans are clever but primitive. They probably found some old wreckage and are trying to reverse engineer it. Their ships still use kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion. They pose no real threat to modern civilization. The chamber murmured with discussion. Most of the delegates agreed with the Krillian assessment. Humans had been contained for 30 years without much difficulty. Their technology was crude but effective for basic space travel. They were like children playing with adult tools, but some species were more worried. The Ashanti delegate had been monitoring human communications and noticed something strange. The humans have gone completely silent, she reported. All normal civilian traffic has stopped. Their colonies are being evacuated at unprecedented speed. The Zephyrian representative floated in his water tank, speaking through translation devices. Our deep space monitors are detecting massive energy discharges from the outer edges of human space. Whatever they're doing, it's happening on a scale we've never seen before. The Council's military advisor was a Korrivan named General Zeke Thule. The Korrivans were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Concordat. He stood up with the slow movements of someone who had lived through many battles. I have reviewed the tactical reports, he said in his deep voice. The humans are not behaving like a species preparing for defense. They are positioning themselves for attack. The chamber fell silent. The idea of humans attacking anyone seemed impossible. They had been model citizens for 3 decades, following every rule and restriction. Their military was supposed to be limited to small patrol ships and defensive platforms. That's ridiculous, snapped the Luxorian delegate. Humans don't have the capability for offensive operations. We made sure of that when we wrote the Treaty of Kepler Station. General Zeke Thule's expression was grim. The treaty assumed they were telling the truth about dismantling their fleet. What if they weren't? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. If humans had been lying for 30 years about their military capabilities, then everything the Concordat believed about them was wrong. Meanwhile, in the dark spaces beyond Pluto, the human fleet was gathering in numbers that would have terrified the Concordat Council. Ships emerged from hiding places that had been prepared decades ago: asteroid bases, quantum-masked installations, and deep space platforms that had never appeared on any alien sensor. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Indomitable, watching the tactical display fill with friendly contacts. Each blue dot represented a human warship that was supposed to not exist. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and the massive dreadnoughts that were humanity's ultimate weapons. "Final count, Admiral," reported her communications officer. 9,743 ships reporting ready for operation. "All crews are at battle stations," Sarah nodded. The number was actually lower than she had hoped. Some ships had been lost to equipment failures during their long hibernation. Others had crews who couldn't be contacted in time. But nearly 10,000 warships was still more than enough for what they needed to do. Captain Marcus Chen brought his ship, the Dreadnought Retribution, into formation with the main battle group. The ship was 10 kilometers of armored death, designed to fight against impossible odds and win. Marcus had commanded her during the early conflicts with alien pirates, back when humans were still learning how to fight in space. "All weapon systems online," reported his tactical officer. "Quantum fusion drives at full power. We're ready for hyperspace jump on your command." Marcus looked at the picture of his niece Maya that he had placed on his command console. She was smiling and holding up a handful of the smooth rocks she loved to collect. She would never collect anything again because an alien soldier had decided her life meant nothing. "Signal the fleet," Marcus said. "We jump in 60 minutes. The human fleet was using technology that officially didn't exist. Their hyperspace drives were generations ahead of what the aliens believed humans possessed. Their weapon systems incorporated advances in quantum physics and exotic matter manipulation. Their ships were protected by energy shields that could deflect anything in the Concordat arsenal. For 30 years, humans had been letting the aliens believe they were primitive. They had carefully maintained the fiction that their technology was crude and limited. Every innovation had been hidden, every advancement kept secret. The Concordat had seen what humans wanted them to see. The deception had been necessary because humans understood something the aliens didn't. Peace only lasted as long as both sides wanted it. If the aliens ever decided that humans were truly a threat, they would try to destroy humanity completely. So humans had pretended to be weak while secretly becoming strong. On Nexus Prime, the Concordat Council was still debating how to respond to the human military buildup. Most delegates favored economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. A few suggested preemptive strikes against human colonies to remind them of their place. The Krillian ambassador was becoming more aggressive in his rhetoric. "The humans need to be taught a lesson they'll never forget. My forces are ready to pacify their colonies and restore order." That was exactly what Admiral Voss had been hoping he would say. The conversation was being monitored by human intelligence networks throughout Concordat space. Every word was being recorded and transmitted back to Earth. "Did you get that?" Sarah asked her intelligence officer. "Yes, Admiral. The Krillian ambassador just threatened to attack human colonies." The council didn't object to his statement. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Perfect. Now we have legal justification under human military law. They're planning to attack civilians so we can respond with preemptive force." The distinction mattered to humans even if aliens wouldn't understand it. Humans had strict rules about when violence was acceptable. Defending civilians from attack was always justified. Maya Chen's murder had been an act of war, and the Krillian threat to attack more colonies made retaliation not just acceptable, but necessary. The final preparations were completed with military efficiency. Each ship received its target assignments and rules of engagement. The plan was simple in concept but devastating in execution. The human fleet would strike at the heart of Krillian space while simultaneously hitting their military bases. Throughout the galaxy, "All ships report ready for hyperspace transition," announced the fleet communications officer, Admiral Voss. Opened a channel to the entire fleet. Nearly 10,000 ships and 3 million human warriors waited for her final words. "Today we end 30 years of pretending to be what we're not," she said. The aliens wanted us to be peaceful farmers and miners who stayed in our assigned systems. We tried to be what they wanted. But they killed one of our children, and that changes everything. She looked at the tactical display showing their jump coordinates. In a few minutes, they would emerge in Krillian space with enough firepower to crack planets. Maya Chen was 8 years old. She died because she ran to her father, and an alien decided that was a crime worth killing for. Today we show the galaxy what human justice looks like. We show them why they were right to be afraid of us. The hyperspace jump began with a flash of light that could be seen from the edge of the solar system. Nearly 10,000 human warships disappeared from normal space, heading toward a destination that would soon understand the difference between human peace and human war. On Nexus Prime, the Concordat Council was still discussing diplomatic solutions when their long-range sensors detected the massive hyperspace disturbance from human space. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases, too large, too powerful, too advanced for what humans were supposed to possess. General Zeke Thule stood up slowly, his expression grave. Council members, I believe we have made a terrible mistake. The humans were never as primitive as we thought. They've been hiding their true capabilities for 3 decades. The chamber erupted in confused discussion. If humans had been lying about their military strength, then the entire balance of galactic power was about to shift. Where are they going? Demanded the Luxorian delegate. The general checked his tactical displays and felt something he hadn't experienced in 50. The Krillian homeworld of Kethmore had never been attacked in its 3,000-year history. The planet was the center of one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces, protected by defense platforms that could destroy fleets and orbital weapons that could crack moons. For centuries, other species had looked at Kethmore and known that attacking it would be suicide. Today, that was about to change. The first sign of trouble came from the outer sensor stations. Long-range scanners detected massive hyperspace disturbances approaching from the direction of human space. The energy signatures were impossible, too large, too powerful, too numerous for what humans were supposed to possess. Defense control. This is Monitor Station 7, reported the duty officer, his voice tight with confusion. I'm reading approximately 10,000 hyperspace contacts on approach vector. Please confirm these readings are accurate. The response came back immediately. Monitor 7, your readings are confirmed. All defense platforms are going to full alert. Battle stations throughout the system. Within minutes, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was preparing for war. Krillian battleships moved into defensive positions around their homeworld. Fighter squadrons launched from orbital bases. The great defense platforms powered up weapons that could punch holes through asteroids. Admiral Krex Thule commanded the Krillian home fleet from his flagship, the dreadnought Inevitable Victory. He was a veteran of 40 battles and had never lost a single engagement. The idea that primitive humans would dare attack Kethmore seemed like some kind of elaborate joke. How many ships do the humans possess in total? He asked his intelligence officer. According to our files, approximately 200 patrol vessels and defensive platforms, came the reply. Their largest ship is classified as a light cruiser. Admiral Krex Thule looked at his tactical display showing 10,000 incoming contacts. Either their intelligence was completely wrong, or the humans had been lying to them for 30 years. Both possibilities were equally disturbing. All ships maintain defensive formation around the homeworld, he ordered. When the humans arrive, we'll destroy them quickly and send their wreckage back to Earth as a message. The hyperspace disturbances reached their peak, and reality seemed to bend as massive shapes began emerging from the void. The first ships to arrive were human destroyers, sleek angular vessels that looked like weapons designed by engineers who understood war. They were followed by cruisers, then battleships, and finally the massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the largest Krillian vessels. Defense control. This is Admiral Krex Thule, the Krillian commander transmitted as his sensors struggled to catalog the arriving human fleet. Please confirm the size classification of the largest human vessels. The response took several minutes as the defense computers tried to process what they were seeing. Admiral, the largest human ships are registering as super dreadnoughts. Length approximately 10 kilometers. Mass equivalent to our largest space stations. Admiral Krex Thule felt something he had never experienced before in 40 years of military service. Doubt. The humans weren't supposed to have ships that large. According to every intelligence report, They were limited to small patrol vessels and defensive platforms. The human fleet completed its emergence from hyperspace and took up positions throughout the Krillian system. They moved with mechanical precision, each ship finding its assigned place in formations that surrounded every major target. It was not the desperate charge of primitives trying to get lucky. This was the calculated deployment of professionals who had planned every detail. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the tactical display fill with Krillian defensive positions. The aliens had a powerful fleet and impressive fortifications. Under normal circumstances, attacking this system would require months of preparation and enormous casualties. But these weren't normal circumstances, and the human fleet wasn't bound by normal limitations. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Krillian fleet commander," reported her communications officer. "Put him on screen," Sarah ordered. Admiral Krex Thule appeared on the main display, his gray stone-like features showing none of the confidence his voice projected. "Human fleet, you are in violation of the Treaty of Kepler Station and Concordat territorial law. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Sarah studied the alien commander for a moment before responding. He was a warrior. She could see that in his bearing and the scars on his armor. But he was also afraid, though he was trying to hide it. "Admiral Krex Thule," she said calmly. "I am Admiral Sarah Voss of the human fleet. The Treaty of Kepler Station became void the moment your forces murdered Maya Chen. We are here to collect justice for that crime." The Krillian admiral's expression didn't change, but Sarah could see the uncertainty in his black eyes. The enforcement action against the human juvenile was necessary and justified. One death does not warrant this level of response. Sarah's voice turned cold as winter on Pluto. "You're right, Admiral. One death doesn't warrant this response. But that one death was a human child, and you made the mistake of thinking we would accept it quietly. Surrender your forces now and your people will be treated according to human military law." "Surrender?" Admiral Krex Thule's composure finally cracked. "You dare demand that the Krillian fleet surrender to humans? Your species exists at our sufferance. We will crush your pathetic fleet and use your wreckage to remind the galaxy why humans should remain in their cages." Sarah nodded to her tactical officer. "Admiral Krex Thule, you've just made your final mistake. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them what happens when someone hurts our children." The Battle of Kethmore began with a demonstration of human technology that shattered every assumption the galaxy had made about their capabilities. The human ships didn't charge forward in desperate attacks or try to overwhelm the defenders with numbers. Instead, they fought with cold, mechanical precision that turned warfare into a science. The first shock came when human weapons opened fire from ranges that should have been impossible. Kinetic kill vehicles launched from beyond sensor range punched through Krillian shields designed to stop energy beams. The aliens had built their defenses around stopping the weapons they understood, never imagining that humans would take such a different approach to warfare. Captain Marcus Chen commanded the dreadnought Retribution from the center of the main assault formation. His ship's primary weapon was a mass driver that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. When it fired, the tungsten rod it launched hit a Krillian battleship with the force of a small nuclear weapon. "Target destroyed," reported his weapons officer, moving to next priority target. Marcus watched the tactical display as the Krillian formation began to collapse under the human assault. The aliens were good fighters, but they were facing an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for 30 years. Every human ship knew exactly what it was supposed to do and when to do it. "Signal from Admiral Voss," announced the communications officer. "All ships are to maintain current engagement protocols. No civilian targets, military installations and fleet units only. The distinction mattered to humans even in the heat of battle. They were here to deliver justice, not to commit genocide. Every target was carefully selected to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing military impact. The Krillian defense platforms were the next to fall. These massive stations had been built to destroy entire fleets, but they had never faced human adaptive tactics. While some human ships engaged the platforms directly, others used the system's own asteroid belt as cover, emerging at unexpected angles to deliver devastating attacks. Admiral Krex Thule watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and realized he was facing something unprecedented. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that rivaled the galaxy's greatest military minds. All ships, Fall back to planetary defense positions, he ordered. We'll make our stand at the homeworld. But the humans had anticipated that move as well. Fast attack squadrons were already in position to intercept the retreating Krillian forces.
The aliens found themselves caught between the advancing main fleet and the waiting interceptors. The battle lasted 6 hours.
When it was over, the Krillian home fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors hiding behind their planet's defensive shields. The mighty defense platforms were floating wreckage. The orbital weapons that could crack moons had been systematically destroyed by human forces that seemed to know exactly where every target was located. Admiral Voss opened a channel to the planet below. This is Admiral Sarah Voss to the Krillian Military Command. Your fleet has been defeated. Your orbital defenses have been destroyed. You have 1 hour to surrender the individuals responsible for Maya Chen's death, or we will commence orbital bombardment of military targets. The response came 30 minutes later. Admiral Voss, this is General Thekmore, military commander of Kethmore. We request terms for surrender. Sarah had been expecting that response. The Krillians were warriors, but they weren't fools. They could see that continued resistance would only lead to more destruction of their forces. The news of the Krillian defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species in the Concordat knew that the human fleet had destroyed one of the most powerful military forces in known space. The victory wasn't just shocking because of its completeness, it was terrifying because of how easily the humans had achieved it. On Nexus Prime, the Concordat Council convened an emergency session for the 3rd time in a week. The great chamber that had once symbolized peaceful cooperation now felt like a war room filled with frightened beings who realized they had badly misjudged their situation. The Krillian home fleet has been completely destroyed. General Ziegthul reported to the assembled delegates. Their orbital defenses were eliminated. Their homeworld is under human occupation. The chamber erupted in panicked discussion. The Krillians had been one of the founding members of the Concordat. Their military strength a cornerstone of galactic stability. If humans could defeat them so easily, what did that say about the safety of other worlds? How is this possible? Demanded the Luxorian delegate. The Treaty of Kepler Station specifically limited human military capabilities. They weren't supposed to have ships larger than light cruisers. General Ziegthul's expression was grim. The humans have been lying to us for 30 years. Their actual fleet consists of nearly 10,000 advanced warships, including super dreadnoughts that dwarf our largest vessels. Their technology is generations ahead of what we believed they possessed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. If humans had been deceiving them about their military strength, what else had they been hiding? How long had they been planning this moment? The Veltar delegate raised her forearms for attention. Our intelligence networks are reporting massive human fleet movements throughout the galaxy. They're not limiting their operations to Krillian space. Human forces are moving toward all major Concordat worlds. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about justice for one murdered child. The humans were launching a galaxy-wide campaign that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. Ambassador Thekvor, the Krillian representative, stood at his podium with the look of someone whose entire worldview had collapsed. His people had been the enforcers of Concordat law for centuries, feared and respected throughout the galaxy. Now they were prisoners on their own homeworld. The human admiral made specific demands, he reported quietly. Justice for the murdered child, reparations for her family, and new agreements regarding human rights. But she also transmitted a message for the entire Concordat. What message? Asked the council president. Thekvor activated the chamber's main display, and Admiral Sarah Voss appeared before the assembled delegates. Her image was being broadcast simultaneously to every Concordat world, ensuring that her words would reach billions of beings across the galaxy. Representatives of the Galactic Concordat, Admiral Voss began, her voice calm and professional. For 30 years, humanity has honored the Treaty of Kepler Station. We accepted restrictions on our movement, limitations on our technology, and oversight of our colonies because we believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. She paused, and her expression hardened. The murder of Maya Chen has shown us that coexistence was never your goal. You saw us as dangerous animals to be contained, not as equals to be respected. You were willing to kill our children to maintain your control. The delegates watched in growing unease as the human admiral continued. The Treaty of Kepler Station is hereby declared void. Humanity will no longer accept restrictions on our technology, limitations on our movement, or interference in our internal affairs. We are not leaving the galaxy, but we are no longer asking permission to exist in it. Admiral Voss leaned forward slightly, and her voice took on an edge that made several delegates step backward from their displays. To any species that wishes to live in peace with humanity, we offer friendship and cooperation on equal terms. To any species that threatens human civilians or attempts to reimpose restrictions on our people, we offer the same justice we delivered to the Krillians. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The message was clear. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted permanently. Humans were no longer the junior partners asking for acceptance. They were equals demanding respect. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Harmony, David Chen stood beside his daughter's grave holding a small device that had just delivered the most important message of his life. Maya's father was no longer just a grief-stricken miner. He was once again Sergeant David Chen of the Human Marine Corps, and he had work to do. The message had contained activation codes and coordinates for a supply cache hidden in the asteroid belt. More importantly, it had given him permission to carry out the mission he had been preparing for since the day he buried his daughter. David knelt beside Maya's headstone and spoke to her quietly. "The bad people who hurt you are going to face justice, little star. Your Uncle Marcus captured them, and they're going to answer for what they did. But more importantly, no alien will ever be allowed to hurt another human child. We're making sure of that." As he spoke, other humans throughout the colony were receiving similar messages. The peaceful mining settlement was revealing its true nature as a strategically positioned military outpost. Hidden weapons were being brought out of concealment. Communications equipment that officially didn't exist was being activated. Engineers who had been maintaining mining equipment for decades were suddenly working on much more sophisticated machinery. The transformation happening on New Harmony was being repeated on human colonies throughout the galaxy. Worlds that had seemed helpless and dependent were revealing hidden defenses and military capabilities. The aliens had been seeing what humans wanted them to see: farmers, miners, and traders grateful for the chance to live among the stars. The reality was much different. Every human colony was a potential fortress. Every civilian settlement had military veterans among its population. Every seemingly peaceful outpost had been built with strategic considerations in mind. Admiral Voss returned to her flagship after accepting the Krillian surrender. The detention bay now held the soldiers who had murdered Maya Chen, including the enforcer who had pulled the trigger. They would face trial under human military law, with David Chen serving as the primary witness against them. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 12 more concordate species," reported her communications officer. "They're requesting negotiations for new treaties based on equal partnership." Sarah nodded. That was the response she had been hoping for from the intelligent species. They could see which way the wind was blowing and were smart enough to adapt. "What about the others?" she asked. "The Hegemony Coalition is mobilizing their combined fleets. Intelligence estimates they're gathering approximately 15,000 ships for a coordinated attack on human space." Sarah smiled grimly. The Hegemony Coalition represented the most militaristic species in the galaxy, races that had built their power on conquest and domination. They couldn't accept the idea of humans as equals because equality would threaten their entire way of life. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Prepare for Phase 2 operations. It seems some species need a more detailed demonstration of human capabilities." The Battle of Kethmore had been impressive, but it was just the beginning. The human fleet had been designed to fight multiple enemies simultaneously across vast distances. The Krillians had faced only a small portion of humanity's true military power. On Earth, the civilian government was adapting to their new situation with remarkable speed. For 30 years they had been playing the role of peaceful colonists who just wanted to be left alone. Now they could reveal their true capabilities to the galaxy. President Chen, David's distant cousin, addressed the human population from the steps of the global parliament building. "Citizens of Earth and her colonies, today we have shown the galaxy who we really are. We are not the primitives the aliens believed us to be. We are not the dangerous animals they feared us to be. We are human beings who demand the right to live with dignity and protect our children." The crowd that had gathered to hear her speech included many people who were learning. the truth about their own government for the first time, secret military programs, hidden technological advances, and carefully planned deceptions were being revealed to a population that had thought they were living under alien oversight. For 30 years, we have prepared for this moment, President Chen continued. We knew that eventually the Concordate's fears would overcome their desire for peace. We knew they would try to harm us, and we made sure we would be ready to protect ourselves. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy discovered just how ready humans had been. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive found themselves facing technology that surpassed their own, worlds that had thought themselves safe behind. Concordate Protection realized that human fleets could appear in their systems without warning. The most shocking revelation came when human forces began liberating other species that had been oppressed by the Concordate. Races that had been conquered and enslaved suddenly found human marines fighting alongside their liberation movements.